Hi, everybody. This is Dustin. I'm doing my weekly office hours. I'm going to share my screen. I will give everybody a warning. I am traveling, and the internet here is atrocious. I am not going to be doing live video. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully, that will resolve the internet issue. That's it. If it's glitchy or you're unable to hear me properly, please let me know. And I'll do the best that I can. Also, per usual, this will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube. So hopefully that comes out well when we do the upload. All right, so I want to go over a couple things. First, per usual, ask any questions that you have. Most of the questions that I answer come from the forums or they come via email, and that's great. But I do respond to live questions. So two things I noticed. One of them was actually in the Autotask Facebook group, which I recommend you join if you're not on it. But the question was around billing and projects. And I think this was actually an old post, but I stumbled upon it and I thought it was really good. And one of the things I've discovered with Autotask is that people make it a little bit too complicated when they bill for projects. Let me walk you through a really good, effective way to bill projects, particularly for projects that don't have complicated milestone billing. There's a much simpler way to bill for it. So again, Dustin Puryear, office hours, GiantRocketship. We automate help desk and Autotask. So actually, before that, I forgot my agenda. One thing that we always like to do is just talk about any new updates. We take a couple minutes just to go over that. So one thing for all of our GiantRocketship users is you should see some pretty dramatic speed improvements. We continue to onboard more and more customers as more and more people hear about us. Referrals always welcome, of course. In fact, most of our customers are referrals. But with new customers comes more server load and more database load. And so we've been making a lot of changes for that. Another thing I want to make sure we announce is the integration with Microsoft Teams and Zapier. So now when a ticket comes in, any kind of automatic escalations or scheduling can also be routed, not just inside of Rocketship, but we can send those activities to a third party via webhook. So that is now available. It's live. It works very well. And we recommend you take a look and see if it's working well for you. And we welcome changes, change requests rather. All right, so let's get into some Autotask specific items. Let's talk about billing for projects. A lot of people avoid using Autotask projects because the billing just tends to be more complicated. And so they'll use one-off tickets for it instead. And that works very well for anything that's under a few hours. When you get into 8, 10, 50, 100 hours, obviously tickets are not good for that. And projects work really well. Again, the struggle that people have with projects is it's just kind of a nightmare to bill them. You have your project charges, and then are you billing it hourly? So I'm going to walk you through some best practices and a way to make billing very simple outside of milestone-based billing, right? And so let's take a look at some stuff. We're just going to pull up some random project in our dev tenant. Now, again, my internet's really slow. I suspect that's what's going on here with Autotask. And so hopefully it comes up pretty soon. And let's try this again. And let's just try to pick up another one here. Project. So this is a typical project, and this is partner demo. We don't want to use our own account. Let's use a different one. Let's try this. All right, this is a typical customer project, right? So here we are using a line of businesses in this, which is highly recommended. People have questions about how to use the line of businesses, feel free to ask. Maybe that's something I'll dedicate a whole show to. But so here's what it typically looks like. You have a bunch of charges for, like, let's say you're doing a network upgrade. It's a 50-hour project, a 100-hour project. And you have your firewall and a bunch of little charges in here. And then what people would typically do is they will have a milestone contract set up, right? That, or if you're an MSP, you may have an MSP contract assigned to it, a recurring service contract if it was in your agreement to, for example, do an upgrade every 3 years, and that's included, and you're not billing for that. But believe it or not, you can easily bill for a project without using any contract and still kind of retain all the data you need for your billing, your chart of accounts, right? And so So what I'm going to show you is what complicates it, and the reason people think you have to have a contract on a project is this, right? You're tagging your hours, your labor against it, and you have your people tracking their time against the project. And so if you don't assign a contract, then what it's going to do is it's going to default to time and materials billing based on the role of whoever's adding the time. So if that happens and it's a fixed fee project, you're like, oh well, goodness, the only solution I have here must be to add a contract and now have like a third tier level of management, which is I have to manage the contract and the project itself. Not necessary. Again, if you're doing milestone billing, it is necessary. Or if the cost is embedded into your MSP contract, it's necessary. Otherwise, it's not necessary. And you may think that excludes most most projects, but it doesn't. If you want to use projects to install a department's workstations, it's 4 workstations, is 20 hours of work. You really would rather not have a contract against it. You just want to bill it properly and use the project so you can manage it properly. Well, totally possible. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So notice here all of our work types, and the reason you need the contract is because of the way of the work types that you have assigned to this. I'm going to show you the trick. We're going to go to billing codes here. And then we're going to go to work types. Let's go ahead and do this. And we're going to call one. And we're going to call this, let's call this project billing. Project fixed fee billing, right? And we're going to call this just project fixed fee labor. Let's make it obvious. Now, if you could, you want to tie this to your ledger account so that the QuickBooks sync will just automatically put it into your project labor. I'm going to leave that to an exercise to the reader because I don't have QuickBooks attached to show you. The next thing is we're going to make this non-billable, right? Now, the trick is if we're not careful, we're not going to properly be billing for the work. So we're gonna take care of that in a second. And so we're gonna save and close. Now the next thing we want to do is wait for this internet. Then when this saves, I hope it saved. When this saves, we're going to also want to do a separate billing item here. And the trick is we're going to use this to do the actual billing. And you're going to want to tie this to the ledger account in your QuickBooks. And this test tenant is really giving me some struggles here. So let's go back to finance, accounting, and invoicing. Go to billing codes, materials. Let's see if it did did not. Let's try this again. Project labor, not billable. Let's cross our fingers. Well, that worked like a champ. Now let's do a new material code called project fixed fee labor, right? So whenever you're quoted out, you're going to generally break it out. You're either going to have one lump sum or you're going to have labor on one and then your hardware on the other. Let's just call it project fixed fee. We don't know what the unit cost and unit price is going to be. And then we're going to save this. Again, tie it to your ledger account. I'm not going to do that because I don't have a test QuickBooks here. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to make some changes here. And once you do these changes, and generally you would do this when you're setting up the project. It makes no sense to do it retroactively. So when you're setting up the project, for example, if you're using Quozel or QuoteWorks, just make sure that your items properly map. I'm going to do a new charge here. And this is effectively going to replace the time materials billing and the milestone contract. And for material code, I'm going to use project FF, right? This is the project fixed fee. And let's say I calculated I have 10 hours of labor at $50. So 500, and let's say I'm billing them for 50,000, 500,000. Doing quite well in terms of my numbers on this project. Good for me and my salespeople. And so look, this is going to be that single item billing right here. And so when you go to approve and propose, you're going to approve this and bill this. This is what you're billing, right? Now, notice we do not have a contract on this, but then we're going to make sure that when we set this up, that we set up all the items on the schedule to use at least one as a okay. So I need to have all my people on it. So let's just do one at a time because I don't feel like completely reconfiguring this project. And again, this is why you would do this when you first are setting up the project. But what we're going to do, and heaven help me, that's not working. So let's just go edit it by hand. And so what you would do is you would set the work type to be the project fixed fee. And I think in the last one, I went over how you want to use ticket categories and task categories to ensure your staff cannot make a mistake. And so in this situation, you would have changed your task category to only show, it's not working. Let's see here. I'm really struggling. This my little test is having major issues today, but there we go. And project labor. See this? So really what you want to do is you want to set up a task category, a fixed fee project task category that only lets your person select that. We're going to save and close. So here's the beauty. Now that we have this as our work type, whenever somebody puts time against this, it's always going to come as a non-billable, non-invoiceable labor on the project, but it's still going to account for the role, which means when you run your financial reports, you still get the data that you need for this project. And when you're doing your billing, and you just bill this one item because it's a little small project, you don't need milestone billing on this, then you would just bill this out. That doesn't show, and boom, you're done. There's nothing left to do on this project. Again, because whenever you first set up, you made sure they all had the correct project task category, which restricted everybody to using project labor. And going forward, it just works. You don't have to do complicated billing anymore for this project. It's very simple. And then if you have a change order, handle that separately. That's how you do it. Greatly reduces the management burden of a project and its billing. So I want to show that to you guys. I hope you found that helpful. See if there's any questions specific to that. Okay. All right, so that is done. The next thing is I saw somebody was asking a question about how do you automate a workflow that sends an email to people, but it doesn't include the description of that initial ticket. And that's actually an easy one. I just want to walk you through the workflow rule for that. So let's take a look. Workflow rules actually usually the slowest thing, the fastest thing in this connection. Interesting. So let's act like we're going to create a new workflow rule. Now, if you're using the internal email processor for Autotask, there's going to be a couple of detail changes here versus if you're using Travis's email to AT or another third-party tool. By the way, we do like Travis's tool. I always recommend it, but the internal tool works well. So let's go to notifications. We're going to call this blah, blah, blah. Since I'm testing, sometimes it wants to save stuff, and I don't want to leave it active and mess things up. But what we're going to jump over here, just so you can see how this is configured, is we are going to select the notification template. Now, the trick here is, the guy was asking a little bit of a different question, but the trick is how you modify the response based on the contact or the account. So let's say you have pods, right? You're organized into pods, and you have pod A, B, and C, and maybe you want different responses going out to those people. Maybe your pod A and B or help desk pod C. I'm just kind of making stuff up, but so you understand your variables here. Maybe pod C is more about co-managed IT, and pod A and B are for fully managed IT, right? So not a crazy scenario. And so for pod A and B, you want to say, hey, look, we offer 24/7 support. This is how you contact us. We'll be in touch within the SLA of X, Y, and Z. But for pod C, your co-managed, and maybe your contracts require that the person contact the local IT first, and then that escalates to you as an example, right? So you're kind of an escalation organization for them. Well, in that situation, you really do want separate emails going out to them, and you can only do so much complexity in terms of customizing a notification to have like a workflow in it, and so you want different notifications. And so this is where you select that. But how does Autotask know? Come on, guys, you can do this. And how does Autotask know to pick this workflow that has this notification versus another workflow with a different notification, but for the same general type of response, but for different pods, right? And the way you're going to do that is through your conditions. So remember, there's 3 things to remember about the workflow. One is what triggers the workflow? What makes the workflow wake up to see if it should evaluate if it hits, right? And so if a ticket is created or edited, the struggle with created by, right, can be the fastest, best one when it can be used, but a lot of times you don't have a ticket fully coded. Maybe you have the account still set up, or even if it's an automated alert, maybe you still have to have some other Autotask workflows that are going to check it and change it, right? So we find ourselves most often using edited by. And let's call this the white screen of death. There we go, we are done. And so the next thing is, let's say, status, we're gonna make something up, right? So status has changed to received, for example, if this is a new ticket that's just come in. And change to is always our go-to when possible. And let's just say it's waiting dispatch, right? Now here's the trick. Here's how you differentiate. And this is where you're gonna go down past your ticket attributes. So what I have found when I look at other people's workflows is they tend to fixate on these ticket attributes, and they tend to forget about all these other attributes, right? And so perhaps contract attribute, maybe that's where you're defining this, but most often, honestly, you're going to have this defined in your account attributes, right? And so the way you can handle this is maybe we use it as a territory. This is super common use in territory to refer to. This is pod A, pod B, pod C, or alternatively, you could use a UDF for that. Let's just choose territory, and we're going to randomly select some things. And so let's say this was for pod A and B. So we would actually say in list, let's just say pod A and B. And then this would send our notification for pod A and B clients. Now in the almost duplicate workflow, we would say either territory not in list A and B, or if we want to have full control, we would say territory equal to pod C. And this way we can fully control the notification that goes to the customer based on the pod they're in using these 2 things right here. And so I just wanted to walk through that. I saw the person ask, and basically, how do you do it? They had a little bit of a different question. This is essentially what they were asking. So I hope you found that helpful. Okay, so that's going to be it for this week. Again, I get almost all my questions or via email. By all means, ask live. But shoot me your emails, Dustin@GiantRocketship.com. We automate help desk in Autotask. And I look forward to your questions. Have a good one. Thank you.